The incorrect functioning of the centers is a subject that must be studied throughout one's entire life through self-observation and the rigorous examination of dreams. It is impossible to understand the centers and their correct or incorrect operation in just a moment. We need infinite patience. Our whole life unfolds through the centers and is controlled by them. Our thoughts, feelings, hopes, fears, loves, hatreds, actions, sensations, pleasures, frustrations, and so on, all exist within the centers. Among the centers we possess, the most difficult to control is without a doubt the emotional center. The intellectual center, though difficult, can be controlled more or less. The motor center, which produces movement and is located in the upper part of the spinal column, is also controllable. One can control the movements of the body, to walk, to raise an arm, to furrow the brow if one wishes. All the activities of the motor center are subject to will. But the emotional center is terrible. Negative emotions and feelings are difficult to control. In Hindustan, the emotional center is compared to an elephant. How do they deal with a crazy elephant? They place a healthy elephant on each side, tie them together, and the two healthy elephants eventually teach the crazed one to behave. This method is used in Hindustan, and it works. The emotional center is one elephant, the intellect is another, and the motor center yet another. These two elephants, the intellectual and the motor, must control the crazy elephant of emotions. If at any moment we feel as though we are about to explode with emotions of desperation or anguish, if we are identified with a negative emotion and feel overwhelmed, what should we do? Lie down, relax, and empty the mind. By relaxing the body, we act upon the motor center, loosening the muscles, and releasing tension. By achieving a blank mind, placing the mind in silence and stillness, we also calm the intellectual activity. What happens then? The emotional center has no choice but to calm down. In this way, the intellectual and motor centers dominate the emotional center. They are the two normal elephants taming the crazy elephant. It is also possible to control inferior emotions through the use of superior emotions. There are many kinds of inferior emotions, as you well know. When a relative dies, we scream, cry, despair. Why? Because we refuse to cooperate with the inevitable, and that is the worst of the worst. One must learn to cooperate with the inevitable. We refuse to accept that our loved one is gone. Even when we are looking at the body in the coffin, we do not want to accept the fact, and so we fall into anguish and desperation. All of this is terrible. How can we overcome such a state? In two ways. First, we can use the two elephants, the motor and intellectual centers, relaxing the body and quieting the mind. Second, we can use a distinct emotion, a superior emotion. It might be helpful in such moments to listen to Mozart's magic flute or to immerse ourselves in meditation, reflecting on the mysteries of life and death. Through a superior emotion, we can control the inferior emotions and annul the pain caused by the loss of the beloved. That is obvious. The emotional center is very interesting, but we must take control of the inferior emotions and subdue them. That is possible through our didactic. Inferior emotions such as those related to bullfighting, the theater, drunken parties, the excitement of winning the lottery, or the emotions provoked by sensational news about war or worldly events, all these do great harm. Inferior emotions produced by alcohol and human bestiality only strengthen the inhuman psychic aggregates we carry within and help create new ones. It is necessary to eliminate inferior emotions through the use of superior emotions. Learning to live an edifying and dignifying life is essential. Without that, no progress is possible. How could it be? First of all, we must be more sincere with ourselves in order to develop the superior emotional center and free ourselves from merely negative and superficial emotions. There are people who appear loving and decent with others. There are people who offer friendship. But that is the public or exoteric aspect, and it is not everything. Knowing that we possess an inner psychology, it is not enough to behave decently outwardly, and the fragrance of external friendship is not sufficient. What matters is our internal behavior toward others. Generally, the friendship people offer has two aspects, an external one and an internal one. The external aspect may seem magnificent, but who knows what the inner aspect is like? Are we sure we do not criticize the very friend who receives our friendship? Are we sure we do not feel antipathy toward some aspect of him? Are we sure we are not dragging him into the cave of the mind to torture or humiliate him, all while we smile at him sweetly? How many people feel esteem for someone, yet inwardly criticize the very person they claim to admire? Even if they never express their criticism and smile politely, they secretly mock their closest friends. We must become more complete, more integral. Let us try to make both clocks, the outer and the inner, the external and the psychological, work together in harmony. It is useless to behave kindly toward our friends if, inwardly, we are criticizing and torturing them. It is better to have both watches running in perfect synchrony, moment by moment, second by second. We must become more integral and abandon that corrosive inner psychological criticism. How can such a contradiction exist, esteeming someone while secretly judging him? Speaking well of him outwardly while inwardly devouring him alive? You must understand that within each of us live many people, the eyes. When one catches one of these eyes and studies it through psychological self-observation, one verifies that it possesses the centers, the intellectual center, the emotional center, and the motor instinctive sexual center, meaning it has the three brains. Each eye has a trapped mind, an enclosed will, is a complete person. Thus, many persons' psychic aggregates exist within us. Every friend deserves to be well treated. For example, you may have a friend with aspects you like and aspects you dislike. You are friends with certain eyes of your friend, but your friend also has other eyes that you find disagreeable or antipathetic. We must take into account that many eyes live within each person. Normally, we are friends with certain aggregates of our friend, but not with all of them. So we end up saying, there are things about this friend that I dislike. He has good and bad traits. That is how we usually speak. But this also depends on which aggregate within us is speaking at that moment. This means the friendship we feel is incomplete. We feel affection only for some of the person's aggregates, not for all. Thus, the physical person whom we esteem may have psychological aggregates we do not esteem. At certain moments, those disagreeable aggregates come to the surface, and the person annoys us. That is the crude reality. If we had a permanent I, we could say, I am completely and totally this person's friend, and we would not find faults or defects in him. But there is no permanent I, only many. So, which aggregates in our friend are the ones we esteem? Certainly not all of them. This is why we must be more understanding in our relationships. Why do friends fight? Because suddenly, an aggregate appears in one's personality that is not friendly toward the friend, and discord arises. But if that aggregate withdraws, and another appears that is friendly, then peace returns. How ephemeral and incomplete friendships are. They are incomplete because people lack comprehension. They do not understand the plurality of the I. If they did, friendships would be complete, and each person would know how to excuse the defects of others. Because this knowledge is lacking, we fight with our friends. We must become more conscious of this situation in order to improve our relationships. There exist what we can call mechanical sympathies and mechanical antipathies. Neither is useful because both are mechanical. Sometimes we say, that person annoys me. But what exactly annoys us? A psychic aggregate in that person that is not friendly toward our own aggregates, that is all. We do not need to force ourselves to feel sympathy toward someone for whom we feel antipathy. What we need is to discover the cause of that antipathy. Once we discover, through reflection, that the antipathy is mechanical, it will naturally disappear and only the sympathy will remain. But how can we understand that an antipathy is mechanical? Simply by comprehending the plurality of the eyes. Undoubtedly, many persons live inside each individual, and some aggregates that express themselves mechanically may not be compatible with ours. Let us reflect that within every person who annoys us, there also exist aggregates that might sympathize with us, helpful and friendly aggregates. Not all the aggregates within a given person are disagreeable to us. In someone we dislike, there may exist aggregates we could easily appreciate. If we reflect on this and understand the plurality of the eyes, then that harmful mechanical antipathy, which strengthens the inhuman psychic elements related to the negative emotional center, will disappear. As we eliminate the aggregates of the negative emotional center, the superior emotional center will unfold. And I must say that the superior emotional center is extraordinary, is more powerful than the intellect. Through the superior emotional center, we can comprehend the nature of the fire. The sacred books are written with burning coals, that is to say, with fire. The language of the Bible is parabolic. It is the language of the superior emotional center. Mystical and incorporeal experiences are, by their very nature, parabolic and can only be understood through the superior emotional center. The mysteries of life and death are perfectly comprehended through the superior emotional center. That is obvious. I have told you that the monad is of the utmost importance, and that as we eliminate the inferior psychic aggregates, we will receive the radiations of the monad more constantly. That monad is Atman Buddhi, the ineffable. He receives the force that comes from the Creator Demiurge, and the Creator Demiurge receives the force from the Adi Buddha, the unknowable deity. Atman, being an unfolding of the divine architect of the universe, is ineffable, what we could call Paramatman or Shiva Tattva. Buddhi, although profoundly spiritual, is more concrete, more defined than Atman. Buddhi, Eros, as the igneous principle, becomes more and more evident to us. Her radiations touch us ever more deeply as we dissolve the negative emotions of the emotional center and as the superior emotional center unfolds. Atman Buddhi is the monad, the reality within ourselves, the part that truly matters, the real being within us. We must fight for the elimination of negative emotions so that we may draw closer and closer to the monad. Certainly, the monad helps us, because from Buddhi emanates Eros, that extraordinary sexual force that must be used to disintegrate the psychic aggregates in the forge of the Cyclops. What would become of us without Eros? The opposite of Eros is Antaros, the potencies of evil that are not outside of us, but within us, here and now. They are the aggregates of the inferior emotional center. If we eliminate the negative emotions and develop the superior emotional center, we will penetrate more and more into the essence of fire and draw ever nearer to our inner monad, who's always been smiling upon us. Do not forget that the emotional center is, in essence, pure and resplendent. The inferior emotions, located in its lower regions, constitute the inferior emotional center. But if we eliminate these inferior emotions, then the superior emotional center becomes perfect, like a delicate and exquisite flower. In any case, Atman is the ray that unites us with the Logos and with the Adi Buddha. The force of the Adi Buddha and of the inner Logoi reaches Atman and is contained within Buddhi. However, approaching Buddhi is impossible so long as we harbor negative emotions. In other words, to draw near to the monad is difficult if we persist in nourishing inferior emotions. We must not accept inferior emotions within ourselves. We must cultivate superior emotions. We must listen to the music of Beethoven, Mozart, Liszt, Tchaikovsky. We must learn painting, ensuring that our creations are not infrahuman, but instead filled with our noblest feelings. Whatever we do must be dignifying and essentially edifying. One becomes full of ecstasy while contemplating the Corinthian columns of ancient times, the marble of Rome and Athens, the magnificent sculptures of a dark-skinned Isis in the land of the Pharaohs, an Apollo, the Venus de Milo, or the chaste Diana. One is filled with ecstasy and vibrates with superior emotion when listening to the lyre of antiquity, when in profound meditation in the heart of nature, when walking among the ruins of ancient Rome, or on the banks of the Ganges, or kneeling before the Guru among the eternal snows of the Himalayas. Then the superior emotion vibrates. In ancient times, Lemuria, the age in which the river of the pure water of life flowed with milk and honey, when the lyre of Orpheus had not yet shattered upon the temple floor, the superior emotional center vibrated intensely in every human being. It was the epoch of the Titans, the epoch in which human beings upon the face of the earth could see the aura of the worlds and perceive more than half of a Jaltapatnas of color tonalities. We know well that one Jaltapatnas contains more than 5 million tonalities. But when the inferior emotional center developed, born from violent passions, lust, hatred, and fratricidal wars, that divine sense became atrophied. Humanity became enclosed within this three-dimensional world of Euclid. The time has come to understand that only through the superior emotional center is it possible to penetrate more profoundly within ourselves. If we behave correctly, if we learn to live consciously, if we learn to relate beautifully with our fellow men, then we will draw ever closer to the sacred monad. The sparks of cosmic consciousness will become more continuous, until finally one day, in truth, we will have the awakened consciousness, the superlative consciousness of the being, Buddhi. Then we shall be happy. In that delicious dawn, the vibrations of Buddhi will saturate us completely, and we will know how to live in a perfectly conscious state. Thus ends my lecture. I give complete freedom for you to ask questions about the subject. Master, are you speaking about the virtues? You can see how easy it is to distort the teaching. You make the question with a simple and sincere heart, but after you have said that, another person twists this a bit more and the other one does this even a bit more, and when the teaching reaches the entire America, people will be saying, Samael Aun Weor is against the virtues, no more virtues. In this form, the teaching is distorted, and in this form has happened with the teaching of all the major brothers that has helped the humanity. What is at last of Buddhism? Could you say it to me? Gautama Sakyamuni talked. against the abominable kundardigwater organ. All his doctrine was against the bad consequences of that abominable organ. Today we have a distorted Buddhist gospel. Already nothing, or almost nothing last of the ancient Buddhism. Everything has been distorted. I clarify it. I am not speaking against the virtues. The water is useful, is extraordinary, is good in the wash basin, is good in its container in the bathroom. But what could you say? If the water were in the living room, inundating the bedrooms, everything would have to change. Is not it? It would be bad. The fire is good in the kitchen. It is also something magnificent in the candles. But if in this moment the fire were burning the house and were arriving the firemen, what could we say? It would be a calamity. Is not it? So, each virtue in good in its place, but out its place is bad. Inverential peace. Samael Aun Weor.